Hey guys, welcome back to another 3D printing video. Today we're going to be checking out the Voxelab Aquila 3D printer. So in this video we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some prints. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let's get started. Alright guys, so this is the Voxelab Aquila, and what's interesting is that it is a sub-brand of FlashForge. So this is the box it comes in. It's not very large. Here are the dimensions of the box: 570 by 380 by 220 millimeters. And the packing label says 22 pounds, which is a bit heavier than expected. So let's go ahead and open it up. So right on top here we get a piece of paper that actually looks, yeah, it's a sticker. Seems kind of weird, but in any case, it just tells you that, you know, to make sure that you're on the correct voltage on the printer. So this is what we see on top. We got black soft foam, and it is shaped, which is a nice detail. And this is everything we see, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull things out one by one. So we get a little bit of test filament in this translucent red, 0.05 kilograms of it, PLA. So yeah, that's nice. So here it looks like we have our after sales service booklet, some zip ties, and the manual also. Yeah, and it's actually a really nice one that has pictures and shows you all the parts. Here we have all the parameters of the printer. And then the step-by-step installation guide. And it does look like we're gonna have to install quite a few things here, or put them together. So yeah, this should be fun. This reminds me of the old school days of the Ender 3. So yeah, this is gonna be definitely a more in-depth. But yeah, overall looks like a very good manual and goes into a lot of detail. So love to see that. So we have a baggie of hardware, our AC power cord, which is quite thick, and we do have the US plug. Our extruder assembly, and you guys can see it's partially assembled, and if we notice here, the gears are pressed on. But yeah, everything is metal and seems to be really good quality overall. Now the only thing that's not so great is this extruder assembly feed here, which is plastic, but the good news is that they do have a brass insert to guide the filament in. So yeah, overall good attention to detail. So it looks like here we have a bracket for what appears to be the screen maybe, and here we have the screen itself. It's actually quite large with a nice knob, and I'm not sure how it goes. I'm guessing that's the logo, but in any case, yeah, it's a nice screen. Yeah, this is what the back looks like. Very nicely assembled here. And this is the bracket for it. And it does just clip on together like this. So yeah, when we get to this part of the assembly, we'll put them together. So here we have two extrusion channels, and one of them is for the top of the printer, and the other one is the X-axis where everything will mount onto it. And they do have them all labeled, which is really nice. So here we have the spool holder. I guess there's some other part to it somewhere. So I think we go ahead and pull this layer out. Okay, yeah, so there's another layer below this. So here we have the base that's nicely nestled in this foam. So yeah, I'm pretty impressed with all the packing and attention to detail. It's definitely quite organized. So yeah, I mean, it looks actually pretty familiar, and when I say that, I mean like the Ender 3 maybe. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. So we have quite a few more things in the box. So here we have the X-axis idler bracket, our other piece of the spool holder, which is metal, and they're gonna go together like this. Our X-axis tensioner bracket, X-axis end stop switch that's actually molded into like a whole piece, so that's pretty cool. Our two Z-axis channels, one of them has the end stop switch already connected to it. This is definitely, you know, a kit printer, but it's more assembled than normal. They have everything wrapped nicely, and our lead screw is actually in there, so you can go ahead and get it out. And that's what it looks like here, and it's also got a protective sleeve on it. So yeah, a lot of attention to detail. I'm pretty surprised. Well, I guess it kind of makes sense if this is coming from Flashforge. So, and here we have the X-axis motor, which is already assembled with the coupler on it. So yeah, again, quite a bit of things are assembled. We just have to kind of put them all together. So we do get a spatula, and it is sharpened, but I do not recommend using this on this type of bed. So I would say put this farther away from the printer so you're not tempted to use it. So we got a whole bag of hardware, lots of different bolts and things, more parts, end caps, extra nozzle, a clean out needle, and our USB to micro SD card adapter, and also a belt. And for the last thing, we have a baggie of tools that we'll need to assemble all these parts. So yeah guys, that's all of the things that were included in the box. I'm gonna move it out of the way. We'll bring the printer in. So I'm going to clean up some of this stuff and we'll start the assembly. Actually guys, before we start assembling, what I want to do is maybe take a look underneath the printer, and let's go ahead and take off the build plate. So there's two little clips that kind of hold it down. And this is what it looks like. So it's a piece of glass. And then here we have the aluminum heated part. So let's go ahead and flip it around. And maybe you guys can see, but we do have a little cover here that we can take off and look underneath, and we're going to do that. And then over here we have the power supply. It looks like the slim one. This is our cable to our screen. I'll probably go to the front there. Now what's interesting is they decided not to use this space at all, and they just blocked it off. You kind of see there on the frame, instead of giving you a drawer, which I guess is a more cost-saving thing. In any case, let's go ahead and pop this cover off and grab our tools here. And there are just 3 little bolts. Now, one thing to note that I really like overall is that everything is metal. So it's aluminum or actual metal, so there's no like plasticky feeling anywhere. So it does feel pretty high quality. So let's take the cover off here. Well, okay, so just like the Ender 3, I think there is another bolt on the top. Sure enough, there is. And that just tells you guys how similar these printers are. Let's flip it back around, and now we can take the cover off, and there is a little fan attached to it. We'll just lay it down here to the side. And yeah guys, that's what the board looks like. So it does look like, you know, a custom board of some sort, specifically made for the Aquila, because it does say Aquila main board version 1.0.1. So, and the stepper drivers are synced, little heat sinks, but they are not removable. They're built in. But yeah, it looks pretty good assembled, and all the wires are nicely routed. All right, so I'm gonna put the cover back on. And by the way, the longer bolt does go over here, and the other 2 and the one on top are the same size. All right, so I'm just gonna flip it around and put in our last little bolt up here. All right, so before we get carried away and start assembling this thing, because you know that's going to be pretty in-depth, let's go ahead and do something that's pretty important and you don't want to forget. So the first thing is our voltage selection there in the back. Depending on where you live, you're going to switch that either to 115 or 220, and you guys can see that ours is switched to 115, so we don't have to do anything. So make sure you check that before you forget, because if you don't switch that to your voltage, you could damage the printer. So the next thing we want to do is we want to check our frame, and what I mean by that is that if we put the printer down, we can see we have wobbling back and forth. So what this means is that the frame is not sitting straight. So no matter how I put it, I still move around quite a bit. It wasn't assembled straight on a flat desk. So make sure you have a flat surface before you do this, wherever that is. And what we're gonna do is gonna grab the larger wrench that was provided, and we're gonna loosen these bolts on the sides. There's 4 of them. Surprisingly, they were already pretty loose. So this is going to release the frame where it can bend in the right shape, I guess. So now you guys can see we don't have that wobble anymore. We just untightened the bolts and it kind of fell into where it needs to be. So all we got to do now is retighten them. And so this is a pretty important step, because you don't want to, you know, have the printer all built out and then be doing this later. And you know, make sure you snug these all up. Even if your printer is not crooked and already nice and level, you need to go back and check all these bolts and make sure they're tight enough, because most of the time they get loosened over time. And get them pretty snug, but don't over tighten them. Be careful with that. We do have 4 of them, so we have pretty good clamping force there. All right, and we're gonna do the same thing on this side. Make sure that it's still level, and then we'll snug these all the way up also. All right, and so we're good now. So after this, go ahead and flip over the printer. Under here, what we need to do is we need to check the bolts here in the middle, which hold the Y-axis rail. You wanna make sure these are nice and snug. And mine were too loose. And you want to snug these up pretty good, because this is the main point where the Y-axis is held at. You want to make sure that doesn't move while you're printing. So we're going to snug these up pretty good. And that's it. That's our main frame bolts for the bottom rails that hold kind of the whole structure together. Now while we're under here, you guys can see we got really nice, big, large, squishy rubber feet on 4 corners. So I'd love to see that. That's going to minimize the vibrations that's coming from the printer, which will help with noise. So let's flip this thing back around. Check again, make sure nothing's wobbling and it's straight. So if you do have wobble, go back and fix it, because you don't want to have any kind of play in the frame. So another thing that's good to adjust before you assemble it all together, because it's easier to reach, is the bed here. And because we don't have our frame still built, we have really good access through the side. So if we look underneath, we can see there's some rollers there, and also you can see kind of maybe the eccentric nuts, and that's what adjusts the roller farther and closer away from the frame. And we got 4 rollers, 2 on this side and 2 on the other, and they go around the frame. So these are adjustable and these are just stationary. So we're going to grab this open-ended wrench and we'll be able to turn our eccentric nut with it. Now before we do that, we need to check it. So what I'm going to do is go underneath and kind of spin the rollers. There's a little wobble, if you guys maybe can see that it does move around, but this one here is perfect, and that one needs to be tightened up just a little bit. So the idea here is that you want that little roller, you want it to kind of like spin in one spot. So you want to grab your hand under there and spin it. So I'm actually spinning the roller. So if you can't spin it, that means it's too tight. And if it's too loose, you're going to have a lot of wobble in the bed. So to tighten it or loosen it, we're just going to put our wrench on the eccentric nut and then turn it one way or another to tighten it or loosen it. All right, so I turned it a little and that's actually perfect. So right now I can spin the roller with my finger, so that tells me that it's not too tight. So if you can't spin the roller with your finger just in one spot, kind of like doing a little burnout, that means you're too tight. But if you're too loose, you're obviously going to see the wobble. So the idea here is to get it just tight enough where it doesn't wobble. And this is what we got here, and you're going to have a really nice smooth operation. This is quite important for getting the best print quality out of the printer, is to adjust all these things correctly. So, and hopefully that made sense. You guys can see here on the hot end we have the same situation. We got 2 stationaries and 1 adjustable down here, and we're going to do the same thing later on. We're going to adjust this roller to go up or down to get closer or farther away. So yeah, pretty simple once you understand how it works. All right, so let's go ahead and go to our first step, which is going to be installing the Z-axis profiles. So we're going to need 2 channels and 4 bolts that will go underneath. So here we have the channels. Let's go ahead and unpack them, I guess. Yeah, you guys can see our Z-axis switch is already on here. Go ahead and pull out our lead screw, put it to the side. Be careful with the sharp edges on the ends. And the other channel is just clean with nothing on it. And they're going to go on each side of the printer. The one with the end stop switch will go here. We can see the plug to it on the left side. But before we do that, let's find our bolts, which are in this bag. And there's little packets that are labeled, and the one we're looking for is called M545s. Little letters on the packets that says what they are. So all right, so let's start with this one here with the limit switch, and it's simply going to go like this. So our bolts are going to go underneath from the bottom up, and you guys can see them sticking out right here. We'll go ahead and put both of them through. We'll grab our channel, line it up, and we can go ahead and start it with our hands. So however it is easier for you to do this, you can go completely sideways or maybe even prop up the printer like with this spool here, so it kind of helps you hold it. But yeah, we're essentially just going to start the bolts and run them down. We grab our wrench. We are going to need to go a little higher here. Now it's quite important that you don't tighten this yet, so just run them down is all we're doing. And the reason you don't want to tighten it is because we, still have to assemble everything, and we want this thing to move around, and naturally kind of go where it wants to go. But yeah, same thing for this side. And on this channel, it doesn't really matter which is the top or the bottom. It's exactly the same, looks like. So we'll grab our bolts and channel and go ahead and run them up. And they actually do include an extra bolt just in case you need it. And now we have both of our Z-axis channels on. All right, so for step 2, we're going to be installing the lead screw into the motor and then installing that into the printer. So we're going to need 2 bolts, which are M420, and these are in their own separate pack. So let's grab the motor and the lead screw, and we'll put the lead screw inside the coupler just like that. You can push it all the way down, but I recommend lifting it up just a tiny bit. I mean, just a hair. That way the lead screw doesn't touch the motor shaft, because there is a potential it could make noise. Now we're going to grab an Allen wrench and tighten this bolt on the top to clamp it together so the lead screw doesn't come out. And we can check the bottom bolt too, make sure it's tight. Pretty simple here. And it looks like we're really straight. I'm spinning it. So that's great. And also, if you want to make sure your lead screw is straight, you can grab it before you install it and just roll it on the table and see if it wobbles around. That'll tell you if it's straight or not. I mean, if it does have a little bit of wobble, that's okay, as long as it's nothing severe. But they should be pretty straight. So, and if you guys can see this bracket back here, this is where our bolts will go through the front here, and they kind of barely fit in there, so you have to kind of force them in, as it's really tight. And then this part here will screw into our channel, which is going to be the same side where the end stop switch is. Flip the printer around, you guys can see there's a couple threads there through the channel, and that's where the bolts will go. So we do need to raise it a bit so it can line up, and then we're going to tighten it up. So this bracket here, the way it mounts, it's pretty secure where it needs to be, but it still does move around quite a bit. So you guys can probably see how much the lead screw moves on the top. So what you want to do is you want to line it up. If I could show you guys maybe. Try to get the whole side here, but yeah, if you can see the lead screw in the channel. So the channel is not tight yet, but since this thing does mount on the channel, what's important is that your lead screw here is not offset to one side. So if I do this, you guys can see, you know, that's obviously not okay. You know, if you're even a little off, that can put strain into your lead screw. So basically what you want to do is just line it up straight as possible to the channel and then tighten those little bolts up. And we should be good right there. Now another thing that you might want to check, and you don't really have adjustment on this, but yeah, if you can see here, you want this to be, you know, as close as possible to having the same gap, but it's a little bit off. If I spin the lead screw, you can see it does have a little bit of play. It's very tiny, so I would say this is pretty much perfect. But yeah, I mean, this part, you know, if you want to absolutely get this perfect, you'll have to adjust something down here, like shimmy the top, or better yet, there are tiny little bolts on top here that you can loosen, which will, you know, let you give play back and forth. So, but from my experience, this is pretty close to, you know, where it needs to be. So just a little bit, you know, doesn't make a huge difference there. So, and plus the higher it goes, you know, the more leverage you'll have to push this back a little bit. So yeah, not a big deal, but you know, if you want to be perfectionist, you can't adjust that. All right, well, hopefully we're not going in too much detail here. So for step 3, we're going to be building out the X-axis assembly with, you know, all the parts on it. So we can move the printer to the side for now, and we're going to need to grab the X-axis channel, and that's going to be the one with a bunch of holes, and also it's longer. So if you guys see the 2 smaller channels, one of them is longer, that's the one we need. And the sticker here says X-axis profile. So this might get a little more complicated because we do have a lot of holes and wallowed out places, and yeah, you're just gonna have to pay a little more attention in this steps here. But believe it or not, guys, it's not that hard. So these are all the things we're gonna need. The main extruder assembly, a coupler, which it does come with 2, but we just need 1, I think. 2 M514 bolts, and this wrench here. So let's first go ahead and grab the little coupler and we'll install it onto the extruder mechanism. So literally just, and then we're going to take our wrench and just tighten it up. So, but be careful not to make this tight. Just snug it up a little bit and that's it. You don't want to over tighten that. So yeah, as simple as that. We got that on there. All right, so for the next part, we're going to have to connect this piece to the channel, and it's actually not too hard. It's just a little bit maybe confusing because, you know, you got a bunch of holes everywhere. The way you know you're doing it right is that if you guys see this bolt here, this bolt is actually going to fall into one of these wallowed out spots. It actually looks like it's symmetrical maybe. So maybe it could go on either end is what it looks like. Just kind of interesting. If they designed it that way, that's actually a lot easier to figure out. You're just going to simply grab the wallowed out part and set it over this bolt. And then you got a hole here that will line up with the threads on the channel, which a bolt will go through the other end here. But yeah, through there, the bolt will go into here. And I'm gonna go ahead and check the other side to confirm. And yeah, sure enough, guys, it doesn't matter which side you use. Either side lines up, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, one of our bolts are gonna go in there, and then the other one actually goes up here on the front next to that. So yeah, again, if you guys can see that, pretty simple. Put it together. And then bolt here and a bolt here. In any case, guys, you can kind of see here maybe how it goes together. But yeah, we can go ahead and snug that up. So this does move on the channel back and forth, so kind of line everything up, sort of center and tighten it there. So all right, and that is our step 3, guys. So making pretty good progress. So here we have step 4, which involves kind of a lot of things here, which we need to slide in the hot end and then also install the end bracket, and at the same time also put the belt on. It's not as bad as it looks. So we're gonna also need one more of these bolts that we just used, which is the M514, our end bracket, and also our belt. All right, so we got all of our parts here. Yeah, so you wanna grab your hot end facing up, which is like this. The main thing here is that to make sure that all your cables going to the printer that are tethered to the hot end are not, you know, like all twisted in funny ways. So you wanna make sure it's pretty loose and happy where it's sitting like this. So if we grab what we just built and we grab our hot end with the nozzle pointing down and our wires not being tangled, roll the hot end literally on the rail here. And just like that. Now, before you roll this on, it's probably a better idea, so we're gonna roll it off, to go ahead and set our belt down into the channel with the teeth pointing down and kind of set it in the channel. So about, you know, half of it on each side, and that's kind of gonna drop in there. So yeah, once you got your belt on, we're gonna grab the hot end and we're literally just gonna roll it on there on top of the belt. So yeah, it's not too hard. It seems complicated, but it's pretty straightforward. And so after this, we're gonna install the bracket at this end, and it's this guy here. So if you guys see, there's 2 nuts and then a bolt here, and this bolt here will go on the back side of this channel where the other wallowed out part was. And it's literally gonna line up right here like this. And there's 2 bolts that go here. So I think they only want us to put this one on this side, and the reason for that because we have a tensioner bracket on the other end. So again, here you want to line it up as straight as possible and then snug it up. So but yeah, simple as that, guys. You can see that all of our pieces are on. The hot end's on, the belt's going around, and our bracket here at the end. All right, so for step 5, we also got quite a few parts here to install. So we're going to install the tensioner for the belt. We're going to actually connect the belt to the hot end, and we're also going to install the end cap for the x-axis limit switch. So let's go ahead and grab that, and you guys can see that it has the switch already in it installed. We got the tensioner here, and you guys can see the bearing inside, and then this is how we're going to loosen and tighten it. So we're going to need 2 more M514 bolts and 2 M48 bolts, which are actually in this spare baggie. They're not labeled, but according to the picture on the manual, this is what they look like. So all right, so we got everything we need. So first things first, let's go ahead and install this tensioner. So what we need to do first is unscrew the nut here completely, and this is probably the easiest way to do it. So once that's out, we can go ahead and drop the whole mechanism out. So what we're going to do is we're going to feed our belt through here like this, and after we feed it through there, we're going to install it back into this bracket just like that, and then put our knob back on the tensioner. And we're just going to start it, not go too far, because we want to, you know, have it as loose as possible. And so this bracket here is going to go right around the channel here, just like that. And it's going to line up with some threads on this side. And if we flip it around, there's a hole here with threads also on the other end. And you don't want to tighten this very hard, guys, just ever so slightly. I mean, because it's plastic, so, you know, if you tighten it too hard, you'll warp it. So just snug, since there's 2 of them on each side, it should be plenty. But yeah, simple as that. We got our adjuster on here. So now we can go ahead and connect the belt. So let's grab this one end. And if you guys can see on the hot end, there's 2 notches. And this is where the belt's going to go. So it literally slides in from the side. Hopefully you guys can see that. But yeah, just like that, it just slides in there. And the other end slides into the other one. So yeah, pretty simple. Just make sure your belts are lining up to the center of the channel, and that looks really good right there. And now we can tighten this up a bit, so we can tighten the belt, and it's actually already pretty close to being tight. And be very careful with over tightening this, because it's so easy to over tighten it. Feel the belt, make sure, you know. And mine's already pretty good, and I just tightened it a bit. So with the belts, you want to be looser than tighter, so yeah, keep that in mind. All right, and so for our last part here, we just need to install this switch box here that literally just sits right there, and these are our 2 little bolts that will hold it. So yeah, guys, as you can see, it's not too bad. And honestly, if you enjoy putting things together, this will be pretty fun for you. Plus you get to kind of, you know, learn the printer a little bit, how it works. But yeah, that's on and it's tight, and our switch is there, and so if we go with the hot end, we can see it switching. All right, so if you got this far, you're doing good, because this is probably the hardest part of the whole assembly. So let's go ahead and go to step 6. So for step 6, we're gonna roll the x-axis assembly that we built here onto the printer. All right, so again, making sure that you're not tangled with all your wires back there, and they're happy where they wanna be. So if you have to, you know, untangle them, but you know, mine are good right there. So yeah, for the next part, we're just gonna literally grab it like this and set it over onto the channels. And the little wheels are going to kind of roll on there. So yeah, just like that. Now on the back side, flip it around here, the lead screw needs to line up in this brass bushing right here. So we're gonna kind of line it up, and then we're gonna turn it, bring it down. So, and you guys can see it just literally rolls right down. And it's very smooth here. I can probably even push it with my hand, yeah, so. Now, if I forget to mention this later in the video, you do need to put some kind of grease on here to help it travel a little better and not wear out that brass bushing. So any kind of grease or oil will do. And if you don't have anything, even cooking oil will work too. So, but yeah, this is, you know, pretty simple here, and it just walks right on. Now in the manual, it's talking about adjusting the tightness of the belts, which we'll actually do a little bit later when we adjust everything and check the whole printer. So for step 7, we're going to be actually installing the top frame piece and also the screen on the side of the printer. So let's start with the top. Grab this last channel Again, guys, be careful when you take this off not to cut yourself on these corners. So on this channel here, it's pretty simple. We got 4 holes, and one side looks like this and the other side is wallowed out. So the wallowed out part goes up like this. So literally just like this is how it sits on the printer. So there's a baggie of M525 bolts, and we're gonna need 4 of them, but it does come with an extra one. And those literally are gonna go right up here into this channel here. And we'll grab our wrench and run them down. So we're not tightening anything, we're just running them down for now. And if you guys remember, we haven't tightened any of the channels underneath either. So this is good because now we can space out the distance here evenly with our assembly. So what we want to do is raise this up all the way it goes, and so that's given us the correct distance between these 2 channels. So now that we know that's good, now we can go ahead and tighten the bolts on the top because we know it's good here. And we do want to snug these up reasonably well. All right, for the next part, we need to go back down. And it goes down pretty easily. So we're gonna go down as much as we can, and then we're gonna go underneath the printer and tighten those bolts because now we have the right spacing on the bottom because our x-axis is all the way down. And so this will give us a very accurate travel distance from the bottom to the top without any kind of binding or, you know, getting smaller here and larger there or the other way around. And, you know, that will cause print issues too. So yeah, now we're just gonna tighten the bottom up. And you want to be pretty generous with the tightness here. Obviously nothing crazy, but you know, this is the only thing that's holding our whole gantry up, our upper portion. So we want it to be, you know, pretty stiff. Now we'll go to this side. All right, and now we're done with our frame. So another thing to note, once you build the whole frame, there is a possibility that you could fall out of a level again. That happens sometimes. So mine is good here, but you know, if you do need to go back and loosen these bolts on the side and flatten it out, this is a good time to do that. So we do need to install the screen next, and it comprises of 2 pieces, the screen itself and the bracket it connects to. So the bracket itself has the hardware already connected, and you guys can see they're T-nuts. So the first thing we need to do is loosen all these bolts so the T-nuts can spin around. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna line them up with the channel. And once they line up, then we're gonna tighten them and they're gonna turn into the channel and lock in, you guys can see. And the way they turn is kind of tricky, but there's no easy way to, I guess, explain this. But yeah, you first line them up so they can all fall into the channel. As you guys can see, they all fell in. And so then you're gonna kind of hold it where it's in between, you know, not like all the way down or all the way up or to the side. You kind of have to give it some air or freedom, I guess, to spin around. And so then what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna unscrew the bolt and then start screwing it back on or back in, and that's gonna tighten it. And so one of them grabbed, and we're gonna do the same thing for the other ones. Unscrew it and then screw it back in. It should turn and grab. So because there's 4 of them, you know, some of them will grab for sure. But yeah, just the idea here is to unscrew it and then screw it back on, and the T-nut actually turns into the channel and locks itself in. And it's quite important that the bracket is lined up, you know, pretty straight with the grooves. If it's not gonna work. So the bracket's on. Now we can go ahead and clip the screen on here. But before we do, let's go ahead and plug it in. So we got this wire coming out the front. There's a socket here that plugs into, just like that. And we can also see here a speaker for noise making. So yeah, now we're just gonna set it down onto the bracket. Just watch out for that wire underneath. And then we're just gonna clip it on like that. So yeah, it's on. Very cool. So yeah, that wasn't very hard. And now we have the screen on. All right, so we're getting close, guys. So for the next part, we're gonna install the spool holder, the end covers for the channels, and also plug in our PTFE tubing. So while we're over here, let's go ahead and do the PTFE tubing. So this is quite simple. This is the tube here, and we're just simply gonna just insert it, just like that. Now you wanna go, you know, as far in, and then there is a little black part here that kind of holds it in there, or it's like a locker. But a lot of times these PTF tubings will move around with retraction, and this one does have a little bit of play in it. So we might have to print out a little clip that holds the coupler from moving around. So keep that in mind. And also, if this coupler here is not working out for you, you do have an extra one that might work better. So keep that in mind also. But yeah, simple as that. The tube is on, and then our wiring just kind of will go back, and there's a little clip behind here that the wiring does clip onto. So let's go to the top where we're gonna have to install this spool holder. So, you know, if we're looking at the front of the printer, our spool holder needs to be on the left side, so as close as possible that way. So with a nice flat face going to the front, our spool itself is gonna go to the back, so we're gonna install it here. And then the locking nut will go to the front, and then we're just gonna turn it and it's gonna lock it in. So yeah, simple as that. But we do need a couple T-nuts and bolts, which were in the spare packet. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the bolt through and then screw the T-nut on. So facing this way on both of them. So yeah, just like that, guys. You can go ahead and insert it into the top channel here so the T-nuts will line up and fall in. And again, guys, yeah, we got the same concept here. We're going to undo the bolt and then tighten it back in, and that should turn it and lock it in. And sure enough, this one locked in. Now we just got to do the other. And you guys can see that it's facing towards the back. And the reason for that is because whenever you put your spool on here, your filament will feed into the extruder right here. All right, so for the end caps, which are in their separate baggie, you're going to install them right here on each end. And they simply just push on. And if they don't go too easy on, you can tap them with something. And that'll make them go in all the way. And same thing for this side. I'm going to need to tap this one too. And there we go. So now these corners are not sharp, so if you bring your hand around here, you're not going to cut yourself. I like how they thought through that. All right, guys, so we are on our last step, which is connecting all of the wiring. And this is actually quite simple because most of our connections are right here on this side of the printer. And you guys can see where I put this wire through here. There's a little clamp that holds it. So all of our wires are labeled and it's quite easy to figure out where they go. And if you guys notice, some of them are a little bigger and smaller. So the bigger ones are for motors and the smaller ones are for end stop switches. So here we have a big one that says E, and that's going to be the extruder, this motor here. So let's plug that in. All right, here we have another big one that says X on it, and that's going to be the X motor. So that goes under there. Plug it in. Going here to the bottom, we have another motor, and that's going to be the Z motor, and there's a little Z on this plug. So make sure this Z cable here is not going up where it's going to catch on the bed and going back and forth. So that's pretty much everything here. Let's flip it around. We've got two more plugs to plug in. We have this X-axis end stop switch wire, which is here, and there's a little X on it. And this is the smaller plug. And then we have another plug here with the Z-axis end stop switch. And there's a Z on this one. Maybe you guys can see that. It's gonna plug right there. So yeah, that is everything to plug in, I believe. And it's quite amazing that we're pretty much done. Now, we're not, done because we still need to check a few things. And that's going to be our belts and our rollers. We did the bed rollers already earlier, as you guys saw. And the reason we did that is because it's a little, well, actually, it's not too hard to get. Yeah, so I guess it doesn't really matter. You can't do it afterwards. It does come out right here where you can get to it quite easy. So if you haven't adjusted your bed yet, go ahead and do that now. Or if you need to maybe readjust it, you can. Also, you want to check your belts and check the tightness of them. So here we can adjust it to be tighter or looser. Again, on this stuff, you want it to be looser than tighter, meaning like if you can play a note on these belts, you're too tight. So if you're too tight, loosening them, but if you're too loose, tighten them up a bit. But be careful because, you can't feel how much tightness you have on this kind of adjustment. So you really need to kind of, pull on it and feel it. So that feels pretty good here. And you can experiment this as you print. You can loosen them and tighten them and see how it, affects your print quality. Same thing for the X-axis. We've already adjusted it. We can adjust it here. So we're pretty good here. Now, one thing we haven't done is adjusted the wheels on the hot end. So let's flip it around. And here you guys can see we got two stationaries on the top and one adjustable on the bottom. And believe it or not, guys, mine is adjusted perfectly. So yeah, it's really good. So I'm able to spin this pretty freely and there's no funny kind of anything going on while I'm moving around. It's very smooth. So if you're too tight and you can't spin these rollers or they're really hard to spin, that means you need to loosen it. And if you feel any kind of bumpiness or grabbiness, that means you're probably too tight again. Now, if you're too loose, this is going to move around and that's also very bad too. So it needs to be tight enough where it doesn't wobble. And the adjustable wheel is down here and you're going to use this wrench here to tighten and loosen it. So, all right, well, that pretty much concludes the assembly. We can now go ahead and put this bed back on. And you don't want to take off the sticker until you're ready because you want to keep it as clean as possible and not get any kind of grease or anything on it. So yeah, slide it on there, put our clips on, one in the front and one in the back. And we are officially finished with the assembly. All right, so this is what the printer looks like from a distance, and it's quite resemblant to the ever so popular Ender 3. I think that kind of created this whole style of printers. So yeah, on the top here we have the spool holder, pretty generic. Our spool will go on here, and then the filament will go to the extruder. We got 20/20 channel on the top, 20/40s on the side, another 20/20 for the X-axis. So yeah, pretty standard build here. The frame overall does feel pretty rigid, as it is all metal. Let's take a closer look at the hot end. So we got wiring going in there, a PTF tubing, pretty interesting looking cover with the logo, our heat break fans in there, and then our cooling fans on this side. And underneath we can see the nozzle and the heat block, which is insulated, and the cooling duct. Our X-axis end stop is over here. I love the belt tensioners, very easy to adjust. Going down, our Z-axis switch is here. We got a perforated build plate that's glass with a volume of 220 by 220 by 250. So what's great about this kind of build plate is that when it heats up, the filament sticks, and then when it cools off, print just pops off. So we do have these two tabs that hold the build plate to the aluminum part, which is the heated bed, and it's not insulated, which is not a big deal for this size bed. Looks like we got some pretty decent springs and large adjustable knobs. 4 rollers, 2 on each side, which the bed rolls on this 40/40 channel, and also the white belt here is adjustable. Here we got a sticker of how to reach the company and also the manufacturing label. Right below that we have the micro SD card slot and also the USB connection. Very nice large rubber feet on 4 corners. And over here we have the horizontal display, which is quite interesting that they decided to do this. It does take up a little bit more room, but it is quite unique and I kind of like it. So here we are looking at the back side. You guys can see our extruder assembly with the coupler we installed in the tube. Again, I wish this assembly here was metal, but it is easily upgradable. Also, I do like the fact that this spring here is adjustable, how much tension is on the arm. So yeah, it's a pretty good design. I just wish it was metal. You can see where our cable clips here for organizing. So this is our extruder motor, then our X-axis motor here, and this is our lead screw with the brass bushing. And going down, we have the coupler to the Z-axis motor. So going down from there, we can see we got wiring to the bed, and it is strain relieved, which is nice to see. And also this other larger wire that kind of travels and then goes underneath the printer. Also, they are using end caps everywhere so you don't cut yourself on the edges. Very good detail. On the very back here, we can see we have the on and off switch and our power import, which is fused. Here we have the Y motor and this encasing here with the Y in-stop switch being right here. And you can remove this if you need to look at your belt there and your pulley, which there are 2 little bolts that you got to take out to remove this cover. And probably the most important part is our voltage selection in the back here that you need to not forget to check. Make sure it's set on the correct voltage that is in your country. So whatever's closer is what you choose for. So if you got, let's say 240, then you go to 230. And if you got 120, then you'll go to 115. But yeah, definitely remember to check that before you power it on. And here from the back, we can see all the rollers and how they, go around the channels, and also the hot end here. And then these rollers here too, so. And while we're back here, guys, so I don't forget, if you feel like your lead screw is completely dry, like mine is, I think is completely dry. I mean, there is, maybe a tiny amount of oil from the manufacturing, but you want to put some kind of grease on there, whatever you have. So I do have some of this all-purpose white grease, so I'm just going to add a little bit on there throughout the lead screw. And you don't need a lot, just a little bit. I'm just going to rub it with my finger a little bit so it kind of evenly spreads. And then whenever we run this thing up and down, which we can probably go ahead and just push it. Yeah, look at that. So it's going to get much better. Yeah, I can already feel it's much smoother once it hit that grease. So yeah, you definitely want to grease it because you'll get, a really nice smooth motion. As you guys can see, I can just push it up and down. And I mean, it's perfect, literally. So, you don't have to get it to this perfection, but, as close as possible is great. So yeah, guys, overall, I think it's a pretty nice printer. It's definitely, very resemblant of the Ender 3. So I can't wait to see how it performs, because if it does just as good, this might be a great value. For anyone that's, kind of on a tight budget, this could be a good option if it can produce the nice prints. But I do like the overall feel and the build construction. It's quite solid. All right, so I got the printer plugged in the back. Let's go ahead and hit the power button there. And it does power on. You can see it's booted up. Wow, pretty quick actually. And we do have a fan running here. So right off the bat, the screen is nice and bright. We got a white background. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at it. So it is quite vibrant, which I definitely like. So all our navigation is going to be on this knob here. So this is the main home page. And on the side here, we have the branding, hot end temperature, and our bed temperature in Celsius. The first one's print, and that's going to be reading the SD card. And then we have control here. These are going to be all of our controls for the printer. So we got move, disable steppers, out of home, set home offsets, preheat PLA, and automatic unload. So we go all the way up, or we can go back. By clicking this knob, you select it. Let's go to settings. Here we got temperature. Click on that. You can adjust the nozzle, the bed, fan, speed, things like that. So, and also preheating is here too. And then we got motion here. So this is more advanced settings. Filament detection, we can turn that on and off. And this printer doesn't have a filament detector. So and we got reconfiguration, language selection. So let's see what we got here. Okay, Chinese or English looks like. So hopefully we can find that again. Okay, yeah, so it's in China now and English. So yeah, there's only Chinese or English in the set. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. And then you got reset configuration. So very basic and everything you need. And here we have info, which is going to be about the machine, the printing volume, firmware version, the website for the company, and their email. All right, so the first thing we want to do is go into control and then go all the way down to Preheat Pla. So we'll click that, and that's going to start our preheating. And I don't know if you guys can see, but it's showing 200 on the nozzle and 60 on the bed there. So as that's heating up, what we're going to be doing next is leveling the bed. And before we click on out of home or to home the printer to see, make sure everything works, let's go ahead and manually lower this down. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to make sure that our Z-axis in-stop switch right here is clicked before our nozzle hits the bed. So this will guarantee us that, we're not going to, jam into the bed with the nozzle. And sure enough, we're right at the right position there. So our little clicker clicks there before our nozzle gets too close to the bed. And we are actually already preheated pretty much. All right, so if we click on control, we can go to out of home. So if we click that, we're gonna make sure everything works. So the X and the Y worked, and now the Z also works. So that confirms that all of our in-stops works and the motors all operate. So we're good to level our bed. Now this printer doesn't have any kind of leveling assistance, or definitely not any automatic leveling. So it's all completely manual. So after out of homing, we're gonna select disable steppers, and that's just gonna free everything up. And so everything is loose now. I can just push this. So the whole idea here is to be very careful about not moving Z-axes down. But what you're gonna need is some kind of paper. I'm gonna use a sticky note, and we're literally just gonna put it in between the bed and the nozzle, and then we're gonna adjust it with these knobs. And so once we get a little bit of friction, which actually, guys, on my printer here, it looks like that the springs are already pretty loose and the nozzle is too high. So what we're gonna need to do is adjust our Z-axis in-stop switch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just tighten up, compressing the spring rate about halfway or so. So we basically lowered the whole bed down a bit. So now let's flip the printer to the side, and you guys can see there's 2 bolts right here, and this is going to move our Z-axis in-stop switch up and down. So the reason we're doing this is because if we try to loosen this where the bed tries to go up to the nozzle, we're gonna have it too loose. It's gonna bump off really easy, the slightest vibrations or not else. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to compress the springs and bring the whole in-stops down a little bit. And to control that, we need to lower this switch down a bit. So what I'm gonna do, and this might be a little hard to see, guys, but I'm gonna lower the Z-axis down until I'm really close to the bed, but not too close because we can go up since we compressed our springs. So, leave a 1/8 gap or something. And then we're gonna bring the switch up until it clicks. When you hear it click, that's about where you want to be, and that should be close enough. All right, that should be good right there. And you guys can't really see the switch from that end, but it's on the other side. So it does click, and we're still, got a decent gap to the bed. So now that we adjusted our Z-axis switch, let's go ahead and out of home again, because we need to find the baseline again. And you're gonna have to use out of home a lot of times to keep checking, make sure you're still at the right level, because the home is where your printer is gonna start at. All right, so now that we know we're much closer to the bed, we can go ahead and adjust it. Well, I do need to disable the steppers first. So, and you want to be about 1 inch away from the edges, somewhere about where the knob is. So yeah, so now we're going to adjust it till we feel some friction between the nozzle and the bed. We got a little bit there. So you don't have to be too precise on your first runs, because you're going to have to go around and around at least 3, 4, or 5 times. So, and this is the harder part, because now we have to grab this and we have to move it to this side. But we got to be very careful not to push it down or up. You have to be very gentle when you move this around, because you don't want to throw it off. Now, if you do think you threw it off, go ahead and out of home it again and then restart. And actually, as you do a full circle or each corner, now we're going to push the bed forward to do this corner. You might want to out of home it every time you do a round. So, and also, guys, it's very important that the bed is preheated. Like, the bed is very hot right now, and you might want to also preheat your nozzle. So again, we're going to push this very slightly over here. It looks like we're too close on that one. Okay, so that's good. Now we'll go back to the front, and this is already too tight again. So yeah. All right, so now that we're back to the front where we started, we'll go ahead and out of home it again, and then we'll disable steppers, and we'll start our process again, going in the circle. So yeah, and do this, as many times as you need until you feel like, you're really close. Because the closer you get to being level, the better success you'll have printing your first layer, which is the most important one, obviously, because that's where everything builds up. All right, so once you feel really comfortable that you got your 4 corners as level as possible, then we can move to the center, so somewhere in the middle. So I can see right away that we have a little bit of a dip here. So we need to go up with the bed, but it's ever so slightly. So what we can do, or the easiest thing to do, is to turn each knob a certain amount. So what I'm going to do is turn it 1/4 on each one to loosen it. Kind of just eyeball it. And what that's going to do is bring the whole thing up together at the same rate. Okay, so that was a little much, so let's go back an eighth maybe. So I guess I was closer than I thought it was. Or maybe I just bumped it off. So let me go ahead and out-of-home it again. So yeah, definitely out-of-home it as many times as you have to make sure it's right. So yeah, once you feel like you're pretty good everywhere, including the center, you are done, and that's how you level the bed. It's not very difficult, but it does take some patience and some time, and make sure you spend the time to do this, because this is probably the most, neglected part from beginners when you do start off printing, is getting that bed perfectly level, and most of the trouble does come from that. So let's go ahead and raise this up. So now that we're all leveled and preheated, let's go ahead and put in some filament. I'm just going to use some of this red that I have on a spool, as the coiled filament that came with the printer is a little bit hard to deal with. And if you guys saw there, I cut the filament on an angle, and that helps it feed better through the extruder assembly. So if we go here to the top, we can see our spool just sits in just like that. Go ahead and turn the printer. And then our filament is going to go down into the extruder assembly, and you guys can see there's a nice brass fitting there. But yeah, I'm just compressing the arm and then pushing the filament through, and maybe you can kind of see it going through the tube. And so we're just going to push it in until it goes all the way through into the heat block, and then melt it and come out the tip. And there it goes. And it looks like they did have some kind of blue filament in there from factory testing. So yeah, simple as that. We purged it. We got some red coming out now. We are pretty much ready to print from here, so let's go ahead and grab our micro SD card that was included, and it is in this little USB adapter, so this could be handy if you don't have one in your computer. So it is an 8 gig, and it plugs in right here upside down. So now we can go to print, and sure enough, we do have some models in here, it looks like, and it says Aquila test model, so we'll click on that, and there it goes. Looks like it's starting right away. So we're going to try to make sure that we got a good distance between the bed and the nozzle, and if anything, I'll be ready to power it off. So this just paused sitting there. All right, there it goes. And yeah, what I see, we do have a really good distance between the bed and the nozzle, looks like. And yeah, we might be a little high. Yeah, we are a little high. So I'm gonna go ahead right on the fly and turn these knobs just a little bit to loosen it, so the bed will goes up just ever so slightly. So it does appear that we do have a little bit of a dip in the middle on this glass, but it's ever so slightly. And we're gonna fine tune it as it prints to get the perfect distance. But be careful not to be too close to the bed, because we're really gonna damage it if it rubs on this coating here. But yeah, it looks like we're good, and it's printing, and we are sticking to the bed. All right, so this is what our printing screen looks like. On the top here, we got the file name, which is Aquila test model, and then we got this huge bar, which is the percentage of how much it's finished. Printing time, how much time passed, and then the remaining is 00, so I guess it doesn't really know that, or unless it hasn't calculated yet. And then we have our nozzle and our bed temperature, and this display here always stays the same. No matter what menu you choose from here on, this is always here, which is really nice, because this is the information you always want to see. And then we have our speed, which is 100%, and then our z-axis is at zeros because we're still on our first layer. And then we have stop, pause, and more options. So let's click on more options. And here we can control the printing speed, nozzle temperature, the bed temperature, the fan speed. And look at that, guys, we even have z-axis offset, which is really cool. I didn't even know that. So you can actually go up and down here right on the printer, or in the settings on the nozzle, so which is really cool. So if you need to go down a little, you can go into the minus there, and if you need to go up a little, you can go in the plus. So I did adjust it manually on the knob, so I think we're pretty good where we are right now. But that's very nice. You can fine tune it here, so yeah, I'd love to see that there. But yeah, that's basically all our basic options here, and yeah, very nicely laid out. I do like the UI overall. So the printer is a little bit on the louder side. There's quite a bit of fan noise. Now the interesting part is I don't hear any stepper sound noise, so it must have silent steppers. So if that's the case, that's actually quite nice. But the fans on this printer are definitely on the louder side, and I'm gonna bring my microphone so you guys can hear it. So yeah, it's mostly coming from here, and actually underneath also it's just coming in from everywhere. And it is quite audible, so you know that could be an issue maybe for some, but I rather hear fan sound than, you know, having stepper motors constantly going So yeah, just keep in mind that it is quite loud with the fans. All right, so it looks like we're doing pretty good here on our first layer. We might be still a little bit too high on the nozzle, but it does seem to be sticking just fine, so I'm just gonna let it be. And again, I do like that I can adjust this up and down if I wanted to in the menu with the Z-axis offset. So I'm not sure exactly how long this print will be, but we're gonna let it print out and then see what comes out. Alright, so our first print is done, and it did go to the home screen, so I don't know exactly how long it took, but it wasn't actually that long. So you can see the print's not very large. So the bed is cooled off. Let's see how easy it pops off. I didn't even have to pop it, it just came right off. So yeah, I think we were still a little high from the bed, but as you guys can see, it stuck just fine, and then it just pops right off. We didn't even have to pull on it, and that's what makes this bed really cool, is that when it's hot, it really sticks, and when it cools off, the models just pop off. Now, the only negative about this kind of bed is that, let's say you had a power loss, and your printer turned off, your print could just pop off, and then you wouldn't be able to continue it. But a lot of the times, if you're close enough to the bed, it will still stick, even after it cools off, and then when you reheat it, it kind of grabs it back. So, in any case, let's go ahead and look at our first model here. So this looks like some kind of little test model here. We got like a box, some circles, and we can see there's a little bit of stringing in there. Overall, the layers are going down really nice. I definitely like the finish on it. This is a red filament, so it's a little harder to see, but yeah, I think overall it did a really good job. But it is not perfect, and I can see a little bit of under extrusion here and there, just ever so slightly. I don't know if you guys can see that, but yeah, I guess we'll have to print out some more things and we'll see how it does. And on the bottom, you guys can see we were definitely too high on even layering here. But yeah, I mean, overall, good start here, and this shows that everything works and we're on our way to print some more models. Now, a good modification for this printer would be maybe to bring the spool holder down or to the side of the printer. And there are brackets that you can connect here, or just have an external spool holder that will hold the spool to the side there, feeding in a little more direct into the extruder. So for the next part, let's go to the computer and slice our own prints, and we'll also check out what's on the SD card. All right, so here we are at the computer, and I got the micro SD card plugged in. Let's go ahead and open it up. So this is everything that's included. So it looks like we have some G codes, the test model we just printed, and a couple more here. We got some folders with the user manual. Looks like the same thing that's included with the printer. We got software folders, the Voxel Maker slicer for Windows and Mac. Here we have a folder called model, and looks like here we have some models. Okay, so this is the test print we printed. So these are STL files. We have some kind of filament spool bracket, which is, it looks like an extension to add an external spool. And the only issue I see with this design is that it looks like it puts it at a 90 degrees angle, which is still not ideal in my opinion. There's some pictures here, let's see. Okay, so we got a printed rotary nut for the extruder, and then a printed toolbox here, so you can print that out, looks like. And here's our knob for the rotary extruder, and we definitely should print this out. This thing's very helpful. Looks like a test hook, and here's the toolbox. But here's our filament adapter that puts the filament on a 90 degrees behind the printer, which is, in my opinion, not ideal still, because the filament will have to do a 90 degree turn into the extruder. Or rather, the spool go out to the side for a much more direct feed. And we got another image. Okay, this also shows how the spool holders are gonna sit. Again, this is not the great design because it's gonna go 90 degrees this way. So I don't like this design, but you know, if you want to try it out, you do have this part here that you can print out. So yeah, it's really cool to see that they included these STLs with the printer, and pictures kind of show you what they do. So the other G codes is the rotation nut, which will definitely print. We got a test hook, I'm not sure we're gonna need to print that, and a toolbox. And the last folder here is a Cura zip. Now you can choose to use their slicer, which is the Voxel Maker, or I prefer Cura. So if we unzip it, another folder comes out, and here we have the profile, which we can incorporate into Cura, and the actual Cura program, which looks like is for Mac only because it is a DMG file. But anyways, so I already have it downloaded. If you don't have Cura, you can go ahead and download it if this is what you want to use, or you can use the Voxel Maker slicer. I prefer this program because this is what I'm used to. So right now we're on the Creality Ender 3 profile, but let's go ahead and add a new one. So we're going to add printer. We're going to click down here on non-network printers. So if you first download this, you're going to go through this in the beginning. So because this printer is very similar to the Ender 3, I would recommend just going with that. So if we click Creality here, we can find the Ender 3. And I like to use the Ender 3 Pro, but they're pretty much all the same here, 3 or 3 Pro. But let's just go with Pro, and we'll rename it Aquila. And we'll click add. And so these are our parameters here. So as you can see, it matches our build volume perfectly. So everything looks good here. I'm going to click next. And here you guys can see our build volume. Well, let's go ahead and drag something in here. Say a test cube. So if you click on the cube, you can see that we can move it around, and our controls are here on the side. So this is movement and then scale, and you can either drag this or insert the parameters. And then we got rotation also. And down here you got more options to do certain things. So let's go ahead and click on the standard quality up here, and we're going to go through together and set it up. So if you print just like this, I mean, you could have reasonable results, but I do recommend changing a few things. Now if we click here where it says standard quality on this arrow, we can see that we can go to manage profiles, and here we can import a profile. And if we go back to our SD card, we can see there's this Aquila profile, and if I open it, successful import, but there's a warning saying that because it's a quality type draft, it's not available. So it must be not compatible with my version of Cura or something. But in any case, if you do that, you're going to get the profile that the company sends you. But I'm going to quickly show you the things I changed, which is quite simple. So everything here I don't change. Obviously you can adjust your layer height right here. If you want to do a little finer than 0.2, I would do 0.16. Going down to shell, we're going to change the wall count to 3. That makes it a lot better for the walls. And then the top layers to 5 instead of 4. And that's going to help us not have gaps on the very top of our prints. Everything's fine here. Infill density can be anything you want. I usually like 15% for a little quicker. Temperature 200 on the nozzle and then 60 on the bed should be fine. And you can adjust this a little higher or a little less. Printing speed also, you can adjust it anything you want. I like to print at 50. The only thing I like to slow down a little more is the initial layer to 15, and the skirt or brim will put on 20. Retraction at 6.5 should be good. And by the way, guys, this is an Ender 3 profile, so this is why the retraction is at this. So, and you know, you can either go up or down from here according to, you know, what you need. So we don't change anything here. And I do like to print in skirt, which is going to print straight to the bed, and skirt just prints a few lines around the print. And then down here we have special modes, which we have spiralized mode, and this is going to be one layer all around the model. And this is basically a few layers on the bottom and then one layer all the way around, kind of like a hollow print. So we will be printing something with this also. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, there's not much to adjust, and this works very well for 99% of the printers, at least straight out of the box, and you can kind of fine tune it as you learn your printer what it needs. So yeah, once you got your model in here and everything is adjusted, you can go ahead and click the slice button here on the bottom, and it's going to slice it. So it says it's going to take 35 minutes, and then we can save it straight to our SD card from here, or you can choose where you want to save it to your computer. So we'll save it straight to the card, and you can inject it from here also. So I'm going to right click or double click on Mac here, and we're going to clear build volume, and we'll go ahead and drag in a bench in here. And I'm not going to change anything on the parameters. We'll print it just the same way. Slice that. It's going to take 2 hours and 2 minutes. Save it. So yeah, guys, hopefully this was somewhat helpful. If you do want to learn more about how to use Cura, there's a lot of great videos out there, but this should definitely get you started here. So. Alright, so we printed out the calibration cube and the benchy, and they actually turned out pretty good. And I also printed out the knob. So let's start with the cube here. So it does look pretty good overall. So here we have the x-axis. So overall, really good adhesion and pretty uniform. The y-axis, very nice. So very limited ringing and not much vibration. So yeah, pretty solid. We got the x-axis wall and the y-axis wall. So yeah, as you guys can see, very good layer adhesion. This is what our bottom looks like, and the top. So overall looks great. There's a little gappage right there, but other than that, very good quality for this printer. Let's see what the benchy looks like. We'll start in the bottom, looking really nice. And the bed is working great, by the way. It sticks very well when it's hot and then pops right off when it cools off. See the back here, pretty decent. The sides look really good. This is a nice line here. A little bit of under extrusion, and here also, but no ghosting or barely any, so that's a good sign. This is our stitching here. So yeah, overall looks good. You guys can see we got some stringing, and it looks like 6.5 inches wasn't enough. And actually, I think part of the problem is this PTFE tubing. It does move around a little bit as it retracts, I noticed. So what we need to do is we need to print out a little clip that goes in here to keep that from moving around. Now let's keep looking at this bench here. So yeah, overall, I mean, the layers go down really nice, and the cooling is great. So very solid on everything. Now, whenever it does retract, you guys can see it gets a little messy on the walls there, and it seems to be under extruding a bit, and that's only when it has to retract. So yeah, we need to fine tune that in a bit, and I think putting the little clip in here should help with that, but maybe adjusting the retraction, you know, could help us a bit too. So yeah, overall the bench itself is looking great, and honestly, if it wasn't for the stringing and a little bit of under extrusion because of retractions, this would be an excellent print. So yeah, very impressive, guys. And right off the bat, you can tell this thing has really huge potential, and with just some tweaks and a little bit of upgrades. So I did also print this knob that was included with the printer, and what this does is it goes on top of the extruder motor. You can guys maybe see right here. So it literally sits right on top. It should fall in. And there it goes. And now we can churn the filament in and out. It's kind of jammed in there right now, but you can use this to churn it to feed the filament in, like to purge it, which is really cool. And also you'll be able to see this thing churn as it prints, kind of like an indicator that, you know, the filament's going in. So yeah. Now another issue that we are having, and I'm not sure if you could call this an issue, but part of the design, I guess, but you guys can see there's some shavings here. And what's going on is the little brass insert there is kind of eating at our filament as it's going in. And again, there's a 90-degree sharp turn here. You can see how it kind of comes in, you know, and that's putting a little bit of strain, because if I tighten this up a bit. So you can print out the spool bracket that goes here on the side. It'll basically be something like this, but it still doesn't make any sense because you still have this 90 degrees. So what it needs to do is this would be ideal, because then it's feeding straight into there. But I'm going to use what I already have, which is this spool holder here. Is just 2 pieces with some skateboard bearings inside, and I printed this out many years ago, and I still use it once in a while when I need to, and this actually would work pretty good here for this application. And you guys can see how well the filament just kind of feeds right into here. And even if it goes higher, you know, the angle is still not crazy compared to, you know, going straight down or straight from the side. So now this solution might not be the best, because if you move your printer around a lot, you know, you kind of have to constantly move the spool holder with it. But if you're not planning on moving much, this could be a good solution there. So So I've been printing with this external spool holder that we got here, and I thought we probably need a better solution that everyone can have. And I printed this bracket here that's actually available on Thingiverse, and I'm going to have links in the description just in case you want to do the same thing. But this is going to put our spool holder on the side here, right back here. So let's go ahead and move up, and we are going to use the original piece as the main holder. And what's great about this is that you don't need anything extra. You just need to print this out, and then this piece here will connect here with the same hardware. Only thing is we got to take the T-nuts off and then insert them into these holes here, and they should line up, you guys can see. And then we're going to grab the bracket, and actually it needs to be like this. So yeah, then we're just going to grab our little bolts and start them onto the T-nut, and this is what it will look like. So yeah, I did print this in PLA, but if you have PETG, that might be, you know, stronger and better, but this should work very well. So the way this thing installs, let's move this out of the way. Looking here on the back, power the printer off. Yeah, there's an end cap that's quite large that pops off, and then what you're going to do is you're going to slide this part right into these channels. So there's a couple grooves that it literally slides into. So pretty easy, guys. So you don't want to go too deep in, but you know, a good amount. You want to try to line this up where it's semi, you know, going to the feed here. Now if you go too much this way, it might be a little harder to put on spool holder when the Z-axis is completely down. So if we go all the way down, there's a little bit less room here. So let's see how that will work. Yeah, it's a little harder. You kind of have to go in and then, you know, go sideways. But honestly, not too bad, even that close. So, and we're pretty much lined up here to the extruder feed. So yeah, we can even go a little bit more maybe. We can still get out quite easily. So yeah, I really like this design, guys. It's pretty nice, and not only gives us a more direct feed, but it's built with the printer, so when you move it around, it stays with it. But the only thing is that, you know, it does become quite a bit wider, but I don't think that's a big deal probably for most of you guys out there. So I would say this is a great little upgrade here. So let's put this cover back on, and we are good with the spool holder. So yeah, I'm pretty happy how that turned out. I'm going to continue printing, and we'll check out the models here shortly. Alright guys, so these are all the prints we printed. I didn't print as much as I wanted to because I ran out of time, but we do have a really good indication of how well this printer prints. And overall, I think this printer is doing really well, and honestly has been mostly impressing me this whole time. I'm still left with the feeling that I'm getting value here. But with that said, one thing that's quite loud is the fans running here on idle, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the printer, as you know, we don't want to listen to fans the whole time. So we've seen the Benchy, we've seen the Cube, we've seen the test model we printed in the beginning. Let's go ahead and check out this Frog, which actually turned out amazingly well. So yeah, everything is printed in 0.2 layer height at 15 millimeters a second, 200 on the nozzle and 60 on the bed, and you guys can see it's quite good. So I did bump up the retraction to 8.5 millimeters, which is a little high, but we've seemed to got rid of most of the stringing. That's a good sign there. And also putting the little clip in here kind of helped too, I think. So but yeah, overall very nice. No sagging or anything weird here. So overall, you guys can see the layering does look really good and uniform. There's a few spots that it's not perfect, kind of like around these eyes here, but depending on what lighting you're looking at, it looks worse and better. So overall, I would say, you know, this is great, and this is a pretty delicate print. You guys can see, you know, we got little fingers here on the Frog. And also what's impressive is the cooling, because normally there's a lot of sagging going around the arms here, but they're nice and straight. And this Frog proves here that this printer can do the quality as long as you got your printer built correctly and everything is operating smooth. So here we have a bearing. And I like to print this print because it shows how accurate the printer is. And this is a functional part, which if we hold the middle and turn the outside, you guys can see it acts like a bearing there. So I did print this a little close to the bed, so we have a lip here, and the bottom first layer did fuse, but it broke pretty easily. I just stuck a wrench in there and turned it. So again, this is, you know, great because accuracy is quite important for some projects. This printer here will not disappoint in that area. And overall, it's kind of hard to see, but the layers went down beautifully. So the last two prints we got here is the astronaut and his spaceship. So I decided to print the astronaut in a glow filament. So this is probably not, you know, the best kind of filament to see the layering for sure, because it is light colored. Again, overall, excellent print. Under the arms here, no sagging or drooping. See if I can get closer here, guys, but yeah, I mean, it looks great. There was a little bit some here around the helmet, not perfection, but that might have something to do with the print itself or the transitions in there. But yeah, overall, great print. Probably won't be able to see, but it does glow there. Anyways, and also another thing that's impressive is, you know, this print's pretty small and we have very small surface area to stick to because there are some ridges on the shoes. The bed does very well in sticking when it's hot, and then when it cools off, the prints just pop off. So yeah, again, everything seems to work great and everything's working and functioning as it should. And so for the last print here, we have the Spaceship, which is printed in maximum height, which is 250 millimeters, and I haven't removed it from the bed yet. So let's see how easy it pops off. And look at that, it just literally popped off. So I haven't even touched it. Our skirt is actually still there. There it is. And that's pretty impressive considering, you know, fragile items like this are really hard to take off unless you have this style of build plate. All right, so let's look at the bottom. Looking pretty good. It does create a pretty nice finish. So here we have the walls, and this is where we can really see how well the layers go down. So there is a little bit of vibrations, you guys can see, but that's pretty normal. This is looking pretty good too. There is a little bit of layering in certain spots. I can almost feel it a little bit, but yeah, as you guys can see, overall it looks great. So yeah, very uniform, and layer adhesion seems to be great. But another thing that's great, and if we look at the windows, is there's no ghosting practically that I can see. Even on this G here, it's usually never that good. Now there is a little bit, but not very much at all that you can even see. And usually these windows really show it, and here too, but it all just looks like it's supposed to. So yeah, pretty cool. And as we go up, we can see this part here, pretty much perfection. And probably the most impressive part, as it goes up, it tapers and then goes into a ball, and none of this melted. Usually for this size rocket, everything melts about halfway from here, maybe a little higher than it melts. But on this printer, nothing melted, not even the ball on the top. Really impressive, and shows you that the cooling is great here. So yeah, I mean, overall guys, you can see that I am impressed with this printer, not because it's something new or revolutionary, but I guess I'm mostly impressed of how well they copied the Ender 3 and actually made it successful. And not only that, gave it to you for a better price, which makes this a great value in my opinion. Now with that said, I still wouldn't, you know, say get this over the Ender 3 version 2. And the reason for that is, you know, Creality has been around for a while and they've been innovating and producing pretty interesting printers over the years, and Ender 3 is one of their most successful high volume printer and is a great choice. And even though I do see some differences here and there, overall they're quite similar in almost every aspect except for maybe the electronics like the main board. But what I'm getting at is, you know, if you want to have the Ender 3, buy the Ender 3. But if you want to save money and you don't care about the name, or even down the line you're not going to be bothered by the idea that you didn't get an Ender 3, then I think the Voxelab here is an excellent choice, especially for people that need the value of what this printer brings. Now I'm not sure, you know, if it's always going to be a value like this. It is priced under quite a bit over the Ender 3, so depending on the prices, and if you're saving, you know, $40, $50, $60 by buying this, then I would definitely go for it. But if you're only going to save 20, 30 bucks, you might as well just go for the Ender 3 itself. So in any case, I think this thing is great for what it is. Do I think this is going to be the next, you know, best printer? I don't think so, as we already have that. So with that said, if you are interested in this thing, I'm going to have some links in the description. Check it out. And if you are interested in other printers, I have quite a few videos in my playlist, so check that out. I'm sure you'll find something interesting there. And if you are interested in 3D printers, I do have more videos coming up, so stay tuned. I know this video is a little long, so if you stuck to the end, I really appreciate it. And as always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.